Ever buy a fuel-efficient car thinking you'd save money on gas, but then you end up driving more because, hey, it's cheaper per mile.
It's like the efficiency backfires on you.
Yeah, it's almost like you're almost encouraged to use more because it seems like it's less impactful.
Exactly. And that, in a nutshell, is the essence of Jevons Paradox. And it's something that's more relevant today than, well, ever before. I mean, think about it.
So we're doing this deep dive into Jevons Paradox today.
We are, and it's fascinating, really, because this whole idea might seem a little counterintuitive at first.
Yeah.
But it gets to the heart of how we as a society respond to new technologies. We often assume, making something more efficient automatically means we'll use less of it. But Jevons Paradox shows us it's, well, not always that straightforward.
Right. And to really understand it, I think we have to go back in time a little bit, back to the Industrial Revolution.
Oh, absolutely.
Our story starts with a guy named William Stanley Jevons.
Back in good old 1865.
1865, yeah. Jevons was studying coal use in England. England at the time was in the middle of this huge industrial boom, and they were making their coal-powered engines more and more efficient all the time.
But here's the thing.
What happened?
Coal consumption, it kept going up.
Up, not down, right. You would think that it would go down because you're using less coal to do the same amount of work.
Right, exactly.
But Jevons, he realized this wasn't just some, random fluke.
Yeah.
It pointed to this kind of fundamental truth about the whole relationship between efficiency and consumption, and he even wrote a book about it. It was called The Coal Question.
It's a classic. What evidence uncovered was that efficiency can sometimes trigger this sort of chain reaction. And it goes a little something like this. First, you have the efficiency gain itself. So, sticking with our coal example,
okay.
Let's say some new, brilliant invention pops up that lets factories produce the same amount of goods, but using way less coal.
That's good for the environment. Less coal, right? Less pollution.
Seems like a win-win, right?
Yeah. So where does it go wrong?
Yeah, where does it go wrong?
Well, that increased efficiency, it often makes the end product, whatever it is those factories are producing, cheaper to produce.
Because your costs go down.
Right, exactly. Your costs go down, which means you can lower your prices and still make a profit, maybe even a bigger profit.
And then when prices drop, people can buy more.
So each individual unit, whether it's a lump of coal or a car ride or whatever that factory is making it, uses less resources.
Yeah.
But the overall demand, because it's cheaper, might just shoot up so much that we end up using more resources overall.
You've got it. It's what we call the rebound effect.
The rebound effect.
And it can be significant. Let me tell you, it can play out in some surprising ways.
Okay, well, let's unpack this rebound effect a little further then, because it's one thing to talk about coal in the 1800s, but I mean, this paradox is happening all the time. I mean, we see it in our modern world all the time. Like, let's talk about appliances. You decide to upgrade to that new energy efficient fridge thinking,
right.
Hey, I'm going to save on my energy bill.
You're going to be greener, help save the planet.
Exactly. But then what happens?
Well, you're not as worried about opening the fridge door constantly.
Yeah.
Grabbing a snack, looking for something to drink.
Oh, it's okay. It's energy efficient.
Exactly. Or you finally feel justified getting that second fridge for the garage.
Oh, yeah, totally. We've always wanted that extra fridge. We can finally justify it now because our other fridge is so efficient.
It's basically free to run.
Exactly. And then, suddenly that eco-friendly choice doesn't seem so simple.
Not so black and white.
It's like, it reminds me of, those calories saved labels on diet foods. You convince yourself you're being virtuous by buying the diet version.
Right.
So it's okay to have two, but then you end up eating more calories than if you had just had the regular version.
It's so true. It's like you're tricking yourself into thinking, oh, I'm being good. I can, indulge a little bit more.
Right. And this is where I think Jevons Paradox, it goes from just being this kind of interesting personal quirk to something that has much wider implications, right?
Yeah.
Because this pattern, it doesn't just apply to our own little individual choices about fridges or snacks or whatever.
It scales up.
It scales up big time.
To entire industries, to systems.
So where else are we seeing this play out on that kind of bigger scale?
One of the most, I think, really striking examples, especially in, our increasingly digital world, is data. Think about it. Data compression techniques, they've advanced like crazy. We can store and transmit more information in smaller and smaller spaces than we ever thought possible.
And yet,
what have we done?
We've become data hogs.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, you think about streaming services, endless social media, downloading these huge files, like without even thinking twice. It's like we can't get enough data.
It's true. We need it faster. We need it now. Give us more.
Yeah. And it's interesting because like we've become so efficient at storing and moving data around that very efficiency has almost fueled this explosion in how much data we're creating and consuming.
It has.
Right. It makes you wonder, like, if those data pipes were still as narrow as they were, 20 years ago, would we even be using this much data?
That's a great point.
Right.
It's a good question to ask.
Because it's like, you widen a highway to reduce traffic.
Right.
But then sometimes that just encourages more cars to get on the road.
More cars, more traffic, and then you're back to square one, really.
Exactly. So if making things more efficient doesn't automatically lead to this sort of like sustainable utopia, what are we missing here? What's the other half of this whole equation?
Well, I think the key thing to remember here is that we can't just focus on the supply side, right?
Yeah.
Like making things more efficient, making more of it.
Right.
And just expect that consumption will just magically regulate itself.
Yeah.
We also need to look at the demand side. How can we encourage, better, more mindful consumption habits?
Okay, so it's not just about like giving everyone a bigger plate at the buffet. It's also about promoting portion control.
That's a great way to put it.
Right.
I like that.
But how do we do that? I mean, because it feels like changing behaviors, it's a lot trickier than just improving, the technology itself.
Yeah, no, you're right. Shifting behaviors, it's definitely a lot more complicated than just, slapping an eco mode button on everything and calling it a day.
Right. It's not as easy as just flipping a switch.
So where do we even begin? I mean, how do we kind of like reconcile this desire for efficiency, because it's not like efficiency is bad, right?
Of course.
We want things to be more efficient.
Absolutely.
But how do we balance that with this need to be more mindful about how much we're actually consuming?
Well, I think it starts with understanding that technology and behavior, they're not these separate forces.
Okay. They're constantly interacting, influencing each other. Just like those wider highways we were talking about. They can lead to more cars on the road. Sometimes, creating these super efficient systems, it can kind of mask the need for us to make some bigger changes to our behaviors.
Oh, okay. So are you saying we need to kind of like rethink how we design these systems in the first place? Like, instead of just focusing on making data storage cheaper and more efficient, we should also be thinking about ways to encourage people to like be more aware of their data use in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. It's about building in those feedback loops. Like, what if streaming services, they actually encouraged you to set data usage limits for yourself?
Oh, okay.
Or what if they gave you like a really detailed breakdown of your consumption patterns?
You've streamed 15 hours of cat videos this month.
Exactly. Or imagine if like social media platforms, they would kind of nudge you to take a break.
Mm-hmm.
Like after you've been scrolling for a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
And it's not about, restricting your access or anything.
Right.
It's about promoting that awareness.
Yeah.
And giving people the tools to kind of self-regulate a bit more.
Oh, that makes sense. It's kind of like, instead of just making the fridge more efficient, we could also design it to maybe give you a little nudge if it senses that you're opening the door, like every 5 minutes.
Exactly. Or what if your smart thermostat, it learned your habits and then would suggest little like tiny adjustments you could make to save energy, but framed it in a way that felt like you were, being given an opportunity, not like you were being restricted.
Oh, yeah. It's funny how just like a subtle shift in how it's presented to you, right, can actually make a difference. Instead of saying like, you're using too much energy, it's like, hey, here's a chance to save a couple bucks on your energy bill and, reduce your impact.
Yeah. It's all about finding that sweet spot, right? Between efficiency and awareness. And that's where this whole deep dive into Jevons Paradox, I think it becomes so important for all of us, because it reminds us that even when we have the best intentions and we're coming up with these great technological solutions, they can sometimes have these unintended consequences.
Yeah. No, it's definitely made me rethink some of my own assumptions. Like, I'm looking at those eco-friendly labels a little differently now.
It's a good thing. It's a good takeaway, I think.
Yeah.
The next time you see some cool new gadget, some new service, it's promising to make your life easier, more efficient.
Right.
Just take a second to think about Jevons Paradox, right?
Yeah.
Ask yourself, what are the potential rebound effects here.
Yeah.
Could this actually lead to me or to other people consuming more in the long run?
Yeah. It's a good reminder that, there's no such thing as a free lunch.
There isn't.
Even when it comes to efficiency.
Even when it comes to efficiency.
Sometimes using less means thinking more.
Oh, I like that. I'm going to steal that one.
Well, this has been a fascinating deep dive. Really, really interesting to kind of explore this idea and see how something, from the 1800s is still so relevant to our lives today. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I always enjoy a good deep dive.